handcuffed, right there on the sidewalk, in front of everyone. The metal clicked around Alicia Carter's wrists before she could even finish her sentence. The sound sharp and final, like a door slamming shut. Phones lifted instantly, screens glowing. Someone laughed under their breath. Someone else whispered, "She must have done something." Alicia did not resist. She did not pull away. She just stood there, shoulders steady, breath slow, eyes fixed somewhere past the crowd, as if she had already stepped outside the moment they were trying to trap her in. Officer Daniel Brooks tightened his grip, firm but controlled, his voice low and official. "Ma'am, you are being detained." His tone carried certainty, authority, the kind that does not expect to be questioned. The late afternoon sun hit the side of the patrol car, reflecting into Alicia's eyes, forcing her to squint just slightly, but she did not look at him. Not yet. Around them, the city moved in fragments. A bus exhaled air at the curb. Sneakers scraped pavement. A child asked a question no one answered. What did she do? No one knew. That did not stop them from watching. Alicia's wrists shifted a fraction inside the cuffs, not struggling, just adjusting to the cold pressure. Metal against skin. She inhaled once, slow, measured. Then she spoke, quiet enough that only the officer closest to her could hear. "The timestamp on that report is off." Brooks did not react, not outwardly, but his fingers paused for half a second before guiding her forward. 17 minutes, Alicia added, her voice calm, almost detached, like she was reading something already written. A man near the curb leaned closer, trying to catch her words, but the officer moved her just enough to block the angle. "Keep moving," Brooks said, louder now, for the crowd. Alicia took a step, then another. Her shoes brushed against a faint chalk mark near the curb, something old, half washed away. She noticed it. Most people would not. Behind them, a second officer spoke into a radio, voice clipped, codes spilling out fast. Alicia turned her head slightly, just enough to hear. "That is not the correct code for this situation," she said, still walking, still composed. The second officer frowned. "What?" "You are escalating a non-violent call," Alicia replied, as if stating the weather. Brooks exhaled through his nose, irritation flickering beneath his control. "You can explain all that downtown." A few people in the crowd shifted. The laughter faded, not gone, just quieter, uncertain. A woman filming lowered her phone an inch, studying Alicia's face instead of the scene. There was something off. Something that did not match the story they were expecting. Alicia stopped just short of the open patrol car door. Brooks nudged her forward. "Step in." She did not move immediately. Not resistance, just a pause, a choice. Then she turned her head and finally looked at him. Direct, steady, no anger, no fear. "You might want to check the dispatch log again," she said. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. It landed anyway. Brooks held her gaze for a fraction too long, then broke it first, gesturing again toward the car. "In." Alicia ducked slightly and stepped inside, the vinyl seat warm from the sun. The door shut with a heavy thud. Outside, the crowd leaned in, trying to see through the tinted glass. Alicia sat still, hands resting lightly in her lap despite the cuffs, her breathing even, her eyes scanning the reflection on the window instead of the people beyond it. Sirens did not blare, no urgency, just a quiet, tightening tension that no one could quite name yet. Across the street, someone's phone started ringing. Not loud, not dramatic, just a simple tone cutting through the noise. Alicia's gaze shifted, just a fraction, toward the sound. Then back to her reflection, waiting. If this moment feels wrong to you, you are not the only one watching. The inside of the patrol car smelled like sun-heated plastic and something faintly metallic. The kind of scent that stayed in the back of your throat longer than it should, and Alicia Carter noticed it the same way she noticed everything else, quietly, precisely, without letting it show on her face as her reflection stared back at her through the tinted window, slightly warped, slightly dimmed, like the world had already decided how it wanted to see her before she even spoke, her wrists resting still in her lap, the cuffs not tight enough to hurt but present enough to remind her exactly where she stood in this moment. And outside the glass, the crowd had shifted from curiosity to something softer, less certain, a few phones still raised but no longer steady, as if the story they expected was starting to slip through their fingers while Officer Daniel Brooks circled around the front of the car, his posture unchanged, controlled but slower now, just enough to betray that something in the air had shifted even if he refused to acknowledge it. And Alicia lowered her gaze for a second, not in defeat, never that, but to follow a detail most people would miss, the faint reflection of his badge number mirrored backward in the window. Her eyes tracking it, memorizing it without effort, while her mind moved ahead of the moment, assembling pieces that had not yet been spoken out loud, and in the distance, the same phone that had started ringing before continued, unanswered, its tone steady, almost ordinary, yet it cut through everything else like a quiet signal waiting for the right person to hear it. And Alicia's fingers flexed once, small, controlled, testing the space within the cuffs, not to escape, just to feel the limits, to measure them, the way someone trained to observe would. And her breathing stayed even, each inhale counted, each exhale placed, because panic was never useful, not here, not now, and through the open front window, she could hear the second officer again, voice lower this time, repeating something into the radio, hesitating mid-sentence, correcting himself. Uncertainty creeping in where there had been none just minutes ago, and Alicia tilted her head just slightly, enough to catch the cadence, enough to confirm what she already suspected. The sequence was wrong, the call classification did not match the response, and she closed her eyes for half a second, not to escape, but to center, to let the noise fall away so the pattern could become clear. And when she opened them again, her gaze moved to the edge of the sidewalk where a security camera hung above a storefront, angled down, blinking a small red light that most people ignored, but not her, never her, because she knew exactly what it meant, what it captured, how long it stored, and who could access it. And that knowledge sat quietly behind her, calm like a second heartbeat, steady, patient, waiting, while outside a woman stepped closer to the car, her voice softer now, almost hesitant. "Ma'am, are you okay?" And Alicia met her eyes through the glass, not answering with words, just a look, composed, grounded, something in it strong enough to make the woman step back without understanding why. And Brooks opened the driver's door, sliding into his seat with a controlled motion, his jaw set, his hand resting near the radio, but not pressing it yet, not committing to the next step. And for a moment, the two of them existed in the same small space without speaking. The engine still off, the city noise pressing in from outside, and Alicia finally spoke again. Her voice calm, level, carrying just enough weight to land where it needed to. "You are missing a step in your protocol," she said. Not accusing, not emotional, just precise. And Brooks glanced at her in the rearview mirror, brief, sharp, like he was trying to place something he did not expect to find, and then he looked away, focusing forward, choosing silence instead of response, but his fingers tapped once against the steering wheel, a small break in rhythm that Alicia did not miss, and the ringing phone outside finally stopped, leaving behind a quiet that felt heavier than the noise before it, like something had just been set in motion that none of them could stop now. The silence inside the car did not last long because the radio cracked suddenly, sharp and unfiltered. A burst of static followed by a voice that did not sound as certain as before. "Dispatch calling Unit 12. Confirm suspect description." Again, repeat, "Confirm suspect description," and Brooks reached for it immediately, pressing the button with controlled force. His tone steady but tighter now. "Unit 12, we have one detained matching initial report," he said. Each word measured, but the pause after matching lingered just a fraction too long, and Alicia's eyes lifted slightly, not to him, not directly, but to the reflection of his hand on the radio, watching the way his fingers pressed harder than necessary, the way his thumb hovered after releasing, as if waiting for something he did not want to hear. And dispatch came back, clearer this time, slower, negative on full match, Unit 12, updated description incoming, and something shifted in the air again. Subtle but undeniable, like a thread pulling loose from a tightly woven fabric, and Brooks inhaled once, deep, controlled, then exhaled through his nose, eyes forward, jaw set, while Alicia tilted her head just enough to listen, her attention narrowing, focusing on every syllable, every hesitation, because details mattered, always. And the updated description began: male, mid-30s, gray hoodie, last seen heading east on foot, and the words landed one by one, heavy, precise, each one separating further from the reality sitting in the back seat of that patrol car, and for a second, just a second, the world outside seemed to pause. The crowd no longer murmuring but watching, waiting, sensing something had gone wrong even if they could not explain it, and Brooks did not turn around immediately. He stayed facing forward, eyes locked on the windshield, as if the glass could offer him an answer that the radio already had. And Alicia spoke again, her voice calm, almost quiet enough to miss. "That is not me," she said. Not defensive, not emotional, just factual. And Brooks finally looked at her through the mirror, longer this time, searching, measuring, and there was something new in his gaze now. Not doubt exactly, but the beginning of it, the kind that does not announce itself but settles in slowly, changing the weight of every decision that follows. And outside the car, one of the bystanders stepped closer, pointing at the vehicle, whispering to someone beside him, the energy shifting from judgment to confusion, from certainty to discomfort, and Alicia's wrists remained still in her lap, the cuffs unmoving, but her posture changed just slightly, her shoulders relaxing by a fraction, not because she felt safe, but because she understood the direction this was going before anyone else did. And the radio crackled again, another voice, this time higher authority, asking for status, asking why a unit had detained someone not matching updated description, and Brooks answered, but his voice had lost a degree of its earlier certainty. "Stand by," he said, 2 words, clipped, controlled, but not as solid as before. And Alicia let her gaze drift once more to the reflection of the street, catching the faint flicker of red and blue lights from another patrol car, turning onto the block, distant but approaching. And she calculated the timing without thinking. The distance, the response chain, the escalation that had already begun to unwind. And then she spoke again, softer this time, but with a precision that cut through the noise. "You skipped verification," she said, her tone not accusing, just stating. And Brooks's fingers tightened on the steering wheel, the smallest reaction, but enough. Enough for Alicia to know he heard it, truly heard it, not just as words, but as something that connected to a protocol he knew he had rushed past. And outside, the crowd had gone quieter now, phones still up but hands less steady, as if the story they came to witness was rewriting itself in real time. And inside the car, the air felt heavier, not with fear, not yet, but with the weight of a mistake that had just been spoken out loud and could not be taken back. The second patrol car turned the corner faster than expected, not reckless, but urgent enough to cut through the stillness that had settled over the block, its lights reflecting in waves across the windshield, across Alicia's face, across the small metal chain linking her cuffs. And Officer Brooks saw it at the same moment she did, his posture tightening, shoulders lifting just slightly as if bracing for something he could not yet name, and the radio came alive again before the vehicle even stopped. A sharper voice this time, higher rank, less patient. "Unit 12, you are holding the wrong individual. Confirm immediate status." And the words did not ask, they pressed, they demanded, and Brooks's hand hovered over the radio for a fraction too long before he answered, "Stand by, verifying." His tone controlled but thinner now, stretched at the edges, and Alicia watched him through the mirror, not with defiance, not with fear, but with a quiet focus that felt heavier than either, her eyes tracking every movement, every hesitation, because this was the moment where control shifted, not loudly, not all at once, but piece by piece, detail by detail. And outside the crowd had changed again, the distance between people closing as they leaned in, voices lower now, questions replacing assumptions, a man in a baseball cap shaking his head slowly, a woman lowering her phone entirely, as if recording no longer felt certain, no longer felt safe, and the second patrol car door opened, another officer stepping out, older, posture firm, scanning the scene before locking eyes on Brooks, and something passed between them without words, recognition, tension, the kind that does not need explanation, and Alicia adjusted her wrists again, small, controlled, the metal shifting softly, not resisting, never resisting, just reminding herself of the space she occupied, the limits that had been placed on her without cause. And she leaned forward just slightly, enough for her voice to carry to the front seat without raising it. "You still have time to correct this," she said, calm, precise, and Brooks's jaw tightened. His grip on the steering wheel, firming as if holding on to something that was already slipping, and he did not respond, not yet, but his eyes flicked once more to the mirror, longer this time, searching for something in her expression that would justify what had already been done, something he could anchor to. But Alicia gave him nothing except stillness, except clarity. And that was what unsettled him most. And the radio cut in again, louder, overlapping with the approaching officer's footsteps on the pavement. "Unit 12, this is Sergeant Miller. Step out of the vehicle now," and the command landed hard, leaving no space for delay, and Brooks exhaled once, slow, controlled, then opened the door, stepping out into the weight of the moment as Sergeant Miller approached, his presence immediate, authoritative, eyes moving from Brooks to the patrol car to Alicia inside, and then back again, and the conversation outside dropped to a lower volume, not silent, but contained. Words exchanged quickly, sharply, the kind that did not need to be heard to be understood. And Alicia watched it all through reflections, through angles, piecing together tone and posture the way others would listen for words, and she caught the shift in Miller's stance, the slight turn of his shoulders toward the car, the narrowing of his eyes, and she knew, before anyone said it out loud, that the situation had crossed a line that could not be ignored. And inside the car, the air felt tighter, heavier, the space smaller than before, and yet Alicia's breathing remained steady, unchanged, because she had already moved past the moment they were still trying to control. And when Brooks opened the back door, the sunlight hit her again, brighter now, harsher, exposing everything. And for a second, he did not speak. He just stood there, looking at her. The certainty that had defined him earlier now fractured into something else, something less stable. And Alicia lifted her eyes to meet his, calm, direct, unshaken, and spoke once more, her voice quiet but unmistakable. "Protocol matters," she said, and the words did not accuse. They did not threaten. They simply existed, undeniable. And outside the crowd had gone almost completely still, the tension no longer hidden, no longer uncertain, but visible in every face, every movement, as the moment stretched, waiting for what would happen next. Brooks did not move right away, the car door still open, sunlight cutting across Alicia's face and the dull silver of the cuffs, and for a moment the entire scene held its breath, the kind of stillness that comes just before something breaks, not loudly, but completely. And Sergeant Miller stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Explain. One word. Direct." No room to soften it, and Brooks turned slightly, just enough to shield part of the view from the crowd, but not enough to hide the tension written across his face. "Initial report matched," he said, but the sentence did not land the way he intended. It sounded thinner now, less certain, and Miller's eyes flicked past him to Alicia, taking in the cuffs, the posture, the calm, and something in his expression hardened. Not anger, not yet, but recognition of a situation that had gone too far to be dismissed. And behind them, the radio burst again, louder this time, overlapping voices, one cutting through clearly. "Unit 12, legal flagged the stop." Repeat, "Legal flagged the stop." And the word legal did something immediate, visible. It shifted the weight of the moment from confusion to consequence. And Brooks's shoulders stiffened, his hand tightening against the doorframe, and Alicia felt it without looking, the shift in gravity, the point where authority begins to question itself, and she leaned forward slightly, the movement small but deliberate, her voice steady, measured. "You are now outside procedural justification," she said, each word clear, each one landing exactly where it needed to. Not louder, not emotional, just precise, and Brooks glanced at her again, sharper this time, something defensive rising. "Stay quiet," he said. But the command lacked the force it had earlier. It sounded more like a reflex than control. And Alicia did not react, did not challenge him. She simply held his gaze for a fraction longer before letting it go, because she did not need to push. The moment was already moving, already unraveling. And Miller stepped closer to the open door, his presence filling the space, his voice lower now but carrying authority that did not need volume. "Ma'am, can you tell me your name?" And Alicia answered without hesitation. "Alicia Carter." Calm, grounded, and Miller nodded once, then asked, "Do you understand why you were detained?" And Alicia paused for just a second, not because she did not know, but because she chose her words carefully. "I understand what was assumed," she said, and the phrasing landed differently. It did not accuse, it reframed, and Miller's eyes narrowed slightly, processing that, while behind him, Brooks shifted his weight, impatience mixing with something less certain, and the crowd pressed in a little closer, drawn by the tension that now felt undeniable. No longer speculation, no longer entertainment, but something real unfolding in front of them. And then it happened again. The same phone from earlier, the one that had rung and stopped, started ringing once more, louder this time, closer, and every head turned, the sound cutting through the air with a strange clarity, and Alicia's eyes moved toward it instantly, not surprised, not curious, just aware, as if she had been expecting it all along. And Brooks followed the sound, his focus breaking for the first time, his attention pulled away from the situation he was trying to control, and the phone kept ringing, steady, persistent, and a man near the edge of the crowd fumbled in his pocket, pulling it out, glancing at the screen, his expression shifting from casual to uncertain. "It says restricted," he muttered, almost to himself, and that word hung there, heavier than it should have been, because it did not belong in a moment like this, not here, not now. And Alicia's posture changed again, barely noticeable, a subtle straightening of her spine, a quiet readiness that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with timing. And Miller looked between Brooks and the ringing phone. Then back to Alicia, the pieces not fully clear yet, but aligning faster than before. And Brooks exhaled sharply, stepping back half a pace, as if the ground beneath him had shifted just enough to throw off his balance. And Alicia spoke once more, her voice calm, unshaken, cutting through the rising tension without force. "You should answer that," she said. And this time, no one laughed, no one whispered, no one moved, because something in her tone made it clear that whatever came next would not be small, would not be easy, and would not be undone. The ringing did not stop. It stretched, sharp and insistent, but no one reached for it. Not Brooks, not Miller, not the man holding it, because something about the moment had shifted from action to hesitation, and hesitation in a place like this felt heavier than any command. And Brooks finally stepped forward, his hand moving toward the phone with controlled urgency, but then stopping halfway, like something unseen held him back. And he looked at Miller instead, searching for direction, for permission, for anything that would steady the ground beneath him. And Miller did not nod, did not speak. He just watched, measuring, calculating, letting the silence press down until it forced a decision. And in that pause, the balance tipped again, not in Alicia's favor, not yet, but away from clarity, away from resolution, into something more dangerous, uncertainty. And Brooks pulled his hand back, turning instead toward Alicia, redirecting control the only way he knew how. "Step out of the vehicle," he said, firmer now, louder, reclaiming space, reclaiming authority. And Alicia moved, slow, deliberate, stepping out into the light, the cuffs still in place, the metal catching the sun in a way that made them impossible to ignore. And the crowd shifted again, phones rising once more, not out of curiosity now, but tension, anticipation, because whatever was happening had not resolved, it had escalated. And Alicia stood there, exposed, hands bound, the weight of every eye pressing in, and for the first time, Something almost imperceptible passed through her expression. Not fear, not exactly, but the awareness of how easily a moment like this could turn, how quickly perception could solidify into something that no truth could undo. And Brooks stepped closer, his voice lower, sharper. "You should not have interfered," he said. The words controlled but edged, and Alicia met his gaze, steady but quieter now, her voice softer than before. "I did not interfere," she said. "I responded." And the distinction mattered, but in that moment, it did not carry the same weight it had earlier, because the environment had changed. The pressure had shifted, and Miller stepped in, his tone firm, cutting through both of them. "Enough," he said, then looked directly at Alicia. "Ma'am, you need to remain silent until we sort this out." And there it was, the line drawn, not aggressive, not hostile, but final, placing her back into the position they had created for her, the position she had been trying to step out of. And Alicia's shoulders lowered just slightly, not in defeat, but in recognition, understanding the direction this was taking, the path tightening around her instead of opening. And the phone stopped ringing again, abruptly, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than before, like an opportunity missed, like something that had almost changed everything but did not. And Brooks exhaled, tension easing from his posture just enough to settle back into control, not fully, not confidently, but enough. Enough to continue, enough to proceed. And he reached for Alicia's arm, not roughly, not forcefully, but with the intent to guide her back toward the car, to move forward, to close the situation before it could unravel further. And Alicia did not pull away, she did not resist, but her eyes shifted once more toward the crowd, scanning faces that had gone from curious to conflicted, some looking away now, some lowering their phones, unsure of what they were witnessing anymore, unsure of who was right, unsure of what would happen next. And that uncertainty wrapped around her like a second set of restraints, invisible but just as real. And for a brief moment, it looked like the moment had passed her, like whatever chance she had to change the outcome had slipped through that unanswered call, through that hesitation, through that silence. And she stood there, hands still bound, voice now quiet, presence contained, as if the system had closed back in around her, steady, unyielding. And if you have ever watched a moment like this and felt something was wrong but did not know how to say it, then you understand exactly what it feels like right now. Because everything in the scene said she was losing, slowly, quietly, right in front of everyone. Brooks's hand closed around Alicia's arm, guiding her back toward the car, the moment tightening again, shrinking, closing in, and for a second it felt final, like the world had already decided how this would end. And Alicia lowered her gaze just slightly, her shoulders still, her voice gone quiet, as if she had accepted the direction they were forcing her into. And that was when it happened. Not loud, not dramatic, just precise. The phone rang again, sharper this time, cutting through the air with a clarity that made everyone freeze, and the man holding it looked down, his face changing instantly, confusion shifting into something else, something heavier. "It says department line," he said, louder now, his voice carrying across the silence. And that word landed differently. It did not belong to the crowd. It did not belong to curiosity. It belonged to authority. And Brooks stopped moving, his grip loosening just enough to break the motion, and Miller turned, eyes locking onto the phone, then back to Brooks, then to Alicia, and for the first time, the alignment was clear. The pieces no longer scattered but connected, and Alicia lifted her head, slow, deliberate, her eyes steady, no longer observing, now holding, now directing. And she spoke, not louder, but with a precision that cut through everything else. "Put it on speaker," she said. And no one laughed, no one questioned it, because something in her tone had shifted, something undeniable, and the man hesitated only a second before pressing the button, lifting the phone slightly, the sound filling the space, and a voice came through, calm, controlled, unmistakably official. "This is internal legal oversight, who is in possession of this line." And the air changed instantly, the weight dropping, the tension snapping into something sharper, and Brooks stepped back fully now, his posture no longer centered, no longer dominant. his eyes moving between the phone and Alicia as if seeing her for the first time. Not as a suspect, not as a mistake, but as something else entirely. And Alicia did not move. She stood where she was, hands still cuffed, but her presence shifted, rising, filling the space that had been taken from her. And she spoke again, her voice steady, clear. "This is Alicia Carter," she said. "Badge verification is unnecessary. You already have it." And the words landed like a key turning in a lock, precise, undeniable. And the voice on the phone paused, just for a fraction, then responded, "Confirmed," one word. But it carried everything: confirmation, authority, consequence. And the crowd reacted instantly. A ripple of sound, confusion turning into shock, phones lifting again, but for a different reason now. Not to capture, but to understand. And Miller's expression hardened, not at Alicia, but at the situation, at Brooks, at the chain of decisions that had led them here. And Brooks's hand dropped completely from Alicia's arm, the control he held dissolving in real time, and Alicia met his gaze, not with anger, not with triumph, but with clarity. And she finished what she had started, her voice calm, exact, using the same language they had used against her. "You initiated a detainment without full verification, escalated without cause, and failed to correct after updated dispatch." Each phrase deliberate, each one placed where it could not be ignored. And Brooks did not respond, could not respond, because the authority he relied on had just been mirrored back at him, stronger, clearer, undeniable, and the cuffs suddenly looked different. Not like control, but like evidence. And Alicia shifted her wrists slightly, not to break free, just enough to let the metal catch the light again. A quiet reminder of what had been done, and the voice on the phone spoke once more, firmer now. "Release her immediately." And this time, there was no hesitation, no delay, because the power in the moment had already moved, already changed hands, and everyone could feel it. The command did not echo, it landed, and everything moved at once. Brooks stepping forward with a stiffness that had nothing to do with control now, his hands no longer certain, no longer automatic. As he reached for the cuffs, the same cuffs he had locked minutes ago with confidence, now opening under a different weight, a different meaning. The metal clicking again, but this time the sound did not close anything. It released, it exposed. And Alicia's wrists came free slowly, her skin marked faintly where the pressure had been, but her posture unchanged, steady, composed, as if the moment had never truly taken anything from her to begin with. And the crowd reacted in a wave, not loud, not chaotic, but unmistakable. A collective shift from watching to understanding, from assumption to realization. Phones still raised, but the intent behind them altered. No longer searching for spectacle, now capturing consequence. And Sergeant Miller stepped in closer, his presence firm, controlled, but redirected. No longer managing Alicia, now managing the fallout. His voice low, direct. "Document everything," he said to the second officer, each word precise. And the officer nodded quickly, already moving, already aware of the gravity settling into the scene. And Brooks stood there for a second longer than he should have, his hand dropping from the cuffs as if the weight had transferred somewhere else entirely, onto him, into him, and he looked at Alicia, not fully meeting her eyes, not yet, his voice lower now, stripped of the earlier edge. "Ma'am," he started, but the word stopped there, unfinished, because there was nothing he could add that would shift what had already been done. And Alicia did not respond immediately. She rolled her wrists once, small, controlled, restoring movement, restoring space, then let her arms fall naturally at her sides. And when she finally spoke, her voice was calm, even, not raised, not sharpened. "You will include the initial detainment time," she said. And the instruction did not sound like a request. It sounded like procedure. And Miller nodded once without hesitation. "It will be included," he said, confirming it in front of everyone, not quietly, not privately, because it needed to be heard, needed to be acknowledged. And the voice on the phone returned again, steady, authoritative. "Sergeant, ensure full report submission within the hour." And Miller responded immediately, "Yes, sir, the chain of command clear, intact, but now directed in a different way, toward accountability." And Alicia stepped forward slightly, just enough to reclaim the space she had been held in, her presence no longer contained by metal or assumption. And she looked around the crowd once, not searching for approval, not seeking reaction, just observing, the same way she had from the beginning, taking in the faces that had watched, judged, doubted, and now stood quiet, and one by one, people began to lower their phones, not because the moment had ended, but because it had resolved, because what needed to be seen had already happened. And Brooks finally lifted his gaze to meet hers, fully this time, and the difference was clear. The authority still there, but altered, grounded by something else, something heavier. And he spoke again, more carefully now. This should not have happened. And Alicia held his gaze for a brief second, long enough to let the words settle, then answered simply, "It did." Not accusing, not emotional, just factual. And that was enough. Enough to close the gap between intent and impact. Enough to leave the moment where it belonged. And Miller gestured slightly to the side, clearing space, allowing Alicia to step away from the center of the scene. Not escorted, not directed, just free to move. And she did, walking past the patrol car, past the officers, past the crowd, her pace steady, her expression unchanged. The sunlight catching her face again, but differently now. No longer exposing, now reflecting. And behind her, the work continued. Notes taken, radios active, voices controlled, the system adjusting itself in real time, correcting what had been done, documenting what could not be undone. And for those still standing there, still watching, the moment did not fade. It settled, leaving behind something quieter but stronger. The unmistakable feeling that justice had not been declared. It had been enforced, calmly, precisely, and in full view. The street did not return to normal right away. It lingered in that quiet space where something important had just happened, and everyone could feel it even if no one said it out loud. And Alicia Carter kept walking, not fast, not slow, just steady, her steps measured against the pavement that had witnessed everything, her wrists free now but still carrying the memory of the cold metal, a reminder not of weakness, but of what had almost been taken without reason. And behind her, the voices of the officers softened into procedure, into documentation, into accountability, but none of that followed her. None of that defined her, because the moment had already revealed what mattered most. Not power, not control, but clarity. And as she reached the edge of the block, the noise of the city began to return, cars passing, conversations restarting, life continuing the way it always does, but something inside the people who had stayed, who had watched, who had felt that shift, had changed, even if only slightly, even if only enough to pause the next time they saw a moment like this unfold. And Alicia stopped for just a second, not turning back, not looking for validation, but simply breathing, grounding herself in the quiet that followed truth. And then she continued forward, because she understood something most people forget, that dignity does not need to be loud to be powerful. It only needs to be consistent. And what happened back there was not just a mistake corrected, it was a line revealed, a line between assumption and understanding, between authority and responsibility, between seeing someone and truly recognizing them. And that line exists everywhere, in every moment where someone is judged before they are heard, where a voice is dismissed before it is understood. And the difference, the real difference, is not always who has the power, but who chooses to use it with awareness. And Alicia had done that without raising her voice, without losing herself, without becoming what the moment tried to force her to be. She stayed present. She stayed precise. And in doing so, she shifted everything, not through force, but through truth. And that is what remains long after the scene ends, long after the cameras lower, long after the reports are filed, because moments like this are not rare. They are just often unseen, often unheard, until someone refuses to disappear inside them. And if you have ever felt overlooked, misunderstood, or judged before being known, then you understand what this moment means, not just for Alicia, but for anyone who has stood in a place where their voice felt smaller than the situation around them, because the lesson is not to fight louder, it is to stand clearer, to know what is right, to hold on to it, and to let that clarity speak even when everything else tries to silence it. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you pause, if it made you feel something real, then share it. Because stories like this do not just tell what happened, they remind us of what should happen every single time.